the 7 stages of progress in counselling compared to stages of denial in addiction. As mentioned a couple of videos ago, I thought I'd do a video about some counselling theory. Those who don't know, I'm studying to be a person-centred counsellor, and I'm just starting my placement, lining up my clients at the moment. So person-centered theory, and anyone who's expert on this is just a rough interpretation. So I'm studying person-centered or humanistic counselling, and this was kind of the godfather of this medium is Carl Rogers, and he defined 7 stages of progress, going from kind of almost complete belligerent denial through to fully functioning individual. So the stages, and this is just from my notes, so the stages read through like this. Stage 1, the individual will be defensive and resistant. Stage 2, they will become less rigid, but unlikely to really talk about themselves, more about things around them, superficial, external. Stage 3, they will talk about themselves, but not about the real present issue. They're likely to talk about past issues and not be willing to deal with what's really going on. Stage 4 is when someone will start expressing emotions and start taking some kind of personal responsibility or accountability for what's going on. Step 5, being able to express present emotions. So being able to focus on the now, how someone's actually feeling in the moment, and just kind of an expansion on step 4. It's really feeling and taking full responsibility for their own actions and thoughts, behaviours, emotions, etc. Stage 6 is approaching congruence. Now, in counselling or humanistic counselling, we talk about incongruence as the way someone wants to be as opposed to the way they are. They'd like to be this nice, happy person, but they realise they're doing things they don't really want to do. And we call that an incongruence between what you want and what you're doing. They'll also start to show what we call unconditional positive regard for others. So they've started to look at themselves, take responsibility for thoughts, actions, behaviours, and then they're able to look at other people's part and say, oh, well, actually, I was being an arse. So maybe I'm not so angry at them anymore. I'm not blaming them. I've taken responsibility for myself, so I can see that I don't have to blame someone else. Step 7 is the fully functioning individual. This is where basically you're like Teflon, water off a duck's back. You're confident in yourself. You're happy with what you're doing. You're not wishing that you were something else. You're doing and being the way you want to be. You're comfortable in yourself. And because of that, you don't have to ever take it out on someone else. There's no things other people can do that are going to affect you because you're happy and confident in yourself. So that's the 7 stages. And when we learned about these, it reminded me of stages of denial. Now, step 1, defensive, resistant. This is kind of someone who's completely blocked off everything. You got your life of drinking. Yeah, bad things are happening. Yeah, there's a bit of chaos, but the drink is not the problem. And if someone were even to suggest that the drink was a problem, they'd be like, no. Complete shutdown. Not open to the idea. No, it's definitely not the drink that's the problem. It's, when I was out and it all went a bit mad and I got into that fight, it was the other guy. It wasn't me. It wasn't a drink. I was myself having a good time, all fine. He was the arsehole. All his fault. Nothing to do with me, nothing to do with drink, nothing. Step 2, less rigid. Unlikely to talk about self. Opening up to the idea. Maybe one of the times someone says, oh, hang on, you think you went a bit OTT with the booze? You go, yeah, no, I did. I know I did. Maybe I'm having a bit too much. You start to see glimmers of an idea. Still won't think that it's the full problem. But maybe you're like, all right, maybe if I hadn't had so many drinks, I wouldn't have got that angry. Or yeah, I know I don't normally act that way if I'm not drinking. Okay, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I still like having a good drink. I don't need to change drinking, but yeah, I can see there's some negatives from it. Maybe the attitude would start to change from flat out denial to maybe. Step 3, talking about self, but not about present issues. This is someone who's going to do a lot of blaming. And, this is where someone would normally come into therapy or start to deal with their issue. They're like, yeah, I know I've got some problems with drinking, but now's not like the worst. I'm only here where I am now because of that stuff. You're going to start blaming people, the past. If you had a life like mine, you'd drink too. So we need to sort out something. Not saying I've got to stop drinking, but maybe sort some things out. Maybe I can not have these crazy nights where I go out and all hell breaks loose. Or maybe I don't have to drink every day. Maybe I need to cut down. Maybe I need some help with this. So step 3 is where someone's going, okay, yeah, there's a problem. Need to sort it out. But unlikely to think that they have to stop. Don't have to stop drinking. Just got to do something to stop all this negative stuff happening. So someone comes into therapy or comes into recovery at stage 3 and they start exploring. And they start looking into what happened. Like I said, they're talking about the past, they're talking about others, and they start looking at all these things. And because you start focusing on these other things with this more open state of mind, you start to explore them and go, hang on. Yeah, it was the drink. Yeah, it was me. Yes, it's too much. So this is the thing. If you're in therapy, the idea is to explore your issues. You might not necessarily know what they are when you start. There's a problem, but you don't know the root of the problem. You don't know the solution. That's why you're in therapy. You know something needs to be done, and that space you explore. For me, I look at my experience of recovery and how it started with group sessions It was those group sessions in rehab or at the local addiction service or with One Northeast, where you're confronted with the truth and no place to hide. Because before you weren't forced to, you didn't have to. You were in that denial stage, everything was just being battered away. But when you make the decision to change and do something about it, the world holds a mirror up. And it's those people around you in recovery, in group therapy, or just a one-on-one therapist if you choose to go down that route. But you're forced to look, and you can't deny it anymore. So step 5 is when you start to look at your present emotions and take full responsibility. Not just in the past, I drank because of the life I had, the pressure I was under, the job I do, the friends I have, all that. No, it's not just I drank because of that. It's like I drink because I drank or drink, whether you're stopping or stopped. I drank because this, it made me feel this. I was escaping from that because I felt a certain way. That's acceptance. That's seeing the story from start to end. Not just saying this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. It made me feel this way. I drank to escape that, which made me feel this way. But the drinking didn't change those emotions. It didn't fix those emotions because they were still there the following day. So I have to let that go. Because otherwise, I'm going to keep carrying it with me forever, and I'm not going to be able to leave it behind, leave the negative behind, leave the drink behind, leave the consequences behind. If I hold on to the pain, the hurt, the negativity, this is where I'll stay forever. So you learn to let go. And this is where a lot of people will end therapy. They'll say, right, I've seen what the problem was. I've dealt with it. I've left the negativity behind, and I can now cope with my day-to-day life, because when that stuff comes up, I know I don't need to let it affect me. So a lot of people will say, I can deal with those issues, so I'll leave therapy. Most people do. And yeah, for me, I didn't. I kept going. I still have a therapist that I see every few weeks. But then I kind of took the next step of doing this course. And by learning about all this stuff in this structured way, you know, I'm taking myself back through the experiences I've had in recovery and going a step further. You know, and in our class, we went round and we talked about where we think we are on these stages. And I felt like I was at step 6, which is approaching congruence and having unconditional positive regard for others. But it's kind of fluid, and there's aspects of my life where I do feel like I've resolved issues and I'm living the way I want to be living. But now and then little things happen and I'm just like, yeah, I've still got things that need to be ironed out. You know? I think, it's almost impossible to reach level 7, the fully functioning individual. Life happens. It has its ups and downs. There's always going to be something that can knock you down a little bit, that can give you a bad day, put you in a bad mood. No one is completely perfect. I mean, one might say that if you are completely perfect, then there might be something wrong with you. If nothing affects you, are you still human? I don't know. But yeah, it really spoke to me, learning this stuff. It's what I've been through over the last 6, coming up to 7 years of recovery. But it's putting it into a kind of a structure, giving it some understanding and context of what I've been through, what I've learned, what I've overcome. So I hope you like that. If you got anything, give it a thumbs up or comment, let me know, and I might do more similar stuff like this. But for now,